Hey everybody, so this is the last of a 5-part series where we've been talking about some of the basic concepts and components and pieces of an inverter type setup system. So an inverter like back here with some batteries and solar panels, and how you might be able to use that in an RV, a sailboat, off-grid homestead type location, or even like utility trailers for working at an off-site like location. But so video number 1 was kind of that high-level overview. Video 2 was about calculating your needs, watts, and then sizing your system appropriately, and some of the stuff to think about there. Video number 3 was series versus parallel, some of the pros and cons to each of those. We actually put these batteries back here in parallel so that we could equalize them. Then we put them in series. Video 4, we hooked them up to the system here, and we talked about code requirements as far as US residential, RV regulations, and sailboat type regulations. So those were the first 4 videos. Go check those out if you haven't already. It'll help you understand kind of what we're getting into here. In this video, I'm going to talk about an inexpensive system, a medium-sized system, and a really expensive system, so that you can get that. Again, this is just so you have a base level of knowledge. You can go talk to an installer, or you know which road you want to go down in the DIY world if you want to do it yourself. So that high level overview perspective of each of those types of systems. And then I'm going to caveat that now by saying you don't have to necessarily pick one of those. You can, if you want to go with the more inexpensive system, but you need more capacity, maybe you get 3 batteries instead of 1, but you still get that smaller inverter. So you can kind of mix and match these any way you want. Maybe you want the high reliability inverter of a Victron, but you want the cheaper, more inexpensive batteries because you want to be able to have more capacity, and you don't maybe necessarily think you need those high dollar batteries for whatever reason. So to each his own kind of thing there. Just know that each of these systems can flex and fluctuate based on your specific requirements. So with that, jump into kind of one of the main components here. I just wrote down some quick little things here just to talk about as we go through. So inverters on a really small system, an inverter, a really inexpensive inverter would be something like this. You can pick this up for about $150, $160 on Amazon. I'll go ahead and throw a link in the description for most of this stuff. If you want to go check these things out and maybe grab something, if you already know that you want to go all in, you can do that. But this has, it's pretty simple. There's a negative. The negative would go to the negative, the positive to the positive. You put a fuse in between there, and this actually comes with a fuse. And then it's got an RJ port on the back here where you can hook up a head unit to this, so you can have a remote on-off switch. So at the end of the day, you want to save power. You don't want this thing to be using its self-consumption power at night while you're sleeping. You can flip that switch and it'll kill the power to this, and you're saving your battery. On the front, you got 2 USB ports and 2 wall outlets up here. So it's, you know, this is for what it is, $160 or so. This is a pretty reliable piece of gear. I've used this extensively over the last, year and a half, and I've been extremely happy with it for the things that I've used it for. You could say that this is the little brother to this guy. If you needed more power, you could upgrade to something like this for a little over $400. And you can see on the front, it's the same setup on the front, except it's got this little panel here. This panel behind here has 3 inputs, and it's for the line, neutral, and ground. I'm sorry, they're outputs. Line, neutral, and ground outputs to send to like a circuit breaker or breaker panel, so that you can power more things than what you can typically get through a standard US plug. Those wires that you typically will plug into here max out at around 15 amps. Even if you got something like this back here, an extension, there's a little fuse on the side here, and on this one it's 15 amps because most of the wires that you're going to plug into these are 15 amps. So just keep that in mind. If you want more power, you can plug into the front here. But 4,000 watts, now that you know from video 2, talking about watts, you know 4,000 watts is a lot of watts. You could run an air conditioner off of this. You could definitely run just about any microwave in the US off of this. There's not much you can't run off of this guy. So, and for $400, that's not a terrible deal. It's a pretty good deal, actually. All right, so moving on from inverters to solar charge controllers. Something like this is all you really need. You can definitely buy bigger, more expensive ones, but this little guy here, it's rated for 10 amps or 130 watts. So you put 1, maybe 2 solar panels on here. It's just 2 wires in for the solar panel, 2 wires out to the battery. And we talked about watts, these batteries being like buckets of watts, and I think it was the second video. So if you think of the watts in here, this is actually putting watts into your bucket, and then you're pulling watts back out of your bucket with the inverter. So with that line of thinking, you know, you can put 130 watts per hour back into your batteries using something like this, which is only about $25 or $30. It also has the USB plugs on the front, but that's only going to work when you're in sunlight. So, but still an inexpensive solution. After that, you got the AC to DC charger. Something as simple as this. This is a 10 amp charger, so that when you get to the shore, your pier on a boat, or you get back to an RV park and you get on hookups, this thing will take over and start charging your battery for you. At 10 amps, this will, or 120 watts, it'll fully charge a battery in about 10 hours or so. So, and these, you know, we sell these too. These are only about 50 to 70 bucks for a very affordable solution. So on top of that, you get one battery. You know, say you get one battery. These run about $550, and some solar panels. So you still need the solar panel. For a solution like this, you're talking maybe 200 watts, maybe two of those flexible solar panels would be enough for a system like this. And this is kind of in line with the example we used in video 2, where you're looking at maybe using 600 to 1,000 watts of power in a day. This stuff right here would be acceptable for something like that. And I threw shunt monitoring on here because sometimes you're going to want to know, well, what's my state of charge? I don't know how much power I have left. Where my battery's at? I put a voltmeter on there, but I don't have a clue what that, you know, I don't know if my batteries are at 20% or if they're at 80%. I can't really tell because at the voltage, there's a really flat charge curve on lithium, so it's kind of hard to tell. So you're going to want a shunt or some kind of monitoring thing. A lot of people like the Victron BMV 712. That runs around, I think, $200 street value. But if you get a lithium battery with Bluetooth built in, there's a little computer that sits inside of here constantly monitoring temperature. It's monitoring current and voltage and anything that can damage the cells. There's a little computer sitting in there making sure that it's kept safe. Well, that same computer in our batteries, in the Rebel batteries, also acts like a shunt. It's constantly counting the watts, the amp hours, how much time is remaining, and all of that stuff is available through a Bluetooth app. So it kind of replaces that whole, it replaces the shunt solution that a lot of systems have. And a lot of people don't talk about that, but if you have Bluetooth built into your battery, that's like replacing the shunt in another system, in another solution in another system. So it's kind of neat, and I just wanted to throw that out there. One battery, solar panels, these things, you're all in for under $1,000. You know, you're going to have your bus bars and wires and fuses and all that kind of stuff too to throw in, but you should be pretty comfortably under $1,000 for a solution like this. I can't think of too many ways to cheap out other than maybe a cheaper battery like lead acid, or one of the, they're called B-grade Chinese lithium batteries that you can find for around $350 right now, street value. But those don't come with the Bluetooth. There's some questionable parts inside, wiring, stuff like that. If they're not willing to open up the battery and show you exactly what's inside, you should probably be questioning what they're sending you. We cut open our batteries. We show you everything that's inside. We want customers to be comfortable with what they're buying from us. So take that into consideration when you're looking at those cheaper solutions. But if you absolutely have to save money, you could probably get away with one of those and be okay. But if it breaks in a couple years, you know, are you really going to get any support from that company, or what are you going to do? So I'll leave it at that for the small system, under $1,000. The next one's going to be the medium system. I'll talk a little bit more about this because it's kind of my favorite. I think it fits the solution for 60 to 80% of the people out there. So we'll talk a little bit in depth on this one. Let me go ahead and move some of this out of the way. Get this out of here. And okay, so for a medium system like this, the reason I say I think this fits most people, and again, flexing in a couple of directions, maybe adding on a second set of 4 batteries if you think you need more requirements, or increasing the inverter size. You could go from this 3,000 watt up to a 6,000 watt. You know, maybe if you're a family of 5, you might want 2 banks together with a 6,000 watt. Totally acceptable type solution to do that. But this right here is going to be kind of the midpoint, I believe, for what most people are going to be looking for in RVs and sailboats and maybe homestead solutions that don't have. If you're not trying to run air conditioning for 8 hours a day, this isn't going to do that. Anything crazy like that is going to be, you're going into another kind of level with that kind of power requirement. But TVs, lights, microwaves, hair dryers, coffee makers, those kinds of things, this is a really good solution for that. You add These 4 batteries at street value, right, street price right now, about $500, $2,000 worth of batteries, about under $1,000 for this, the wires, the bus bars, and all that stuff that you're going to need to go with this. A Wi-Fi unit if you want to be able to do data monitoring in real time, and I'll talk about that in a second. And then you throw solar panels on for maybe another $500 to $1,000, and you're all in for about $4,000. And I think that's kind of a price point that a lot of people are comfortable with. I know there's some people cringing right now saying $4,000, that's twice what I paid for my whatever you're in. But for a lot of people, I think the median kind of family or people out there that are out there are are okay and comfortable with spending that kind of money to have a long-term, and I'm talking 10 to 15-year solution that gets them off the grid and self-sustaining, basically running off of solar, living off of the sun for 10 to 20 years. This is a long-term viable solution. $4,000 when you average that out over 10 years at $400 a year, that doesn't sound too unreasonable, especially if you're taking advantage of being out on the water, living on the hook, as people in sailboats say, which is where you're away from marinas, or boondocking. If you're in the RV world, that's living out on public lands that nobody owns and is free to use. If you're in those kind of situations and you average this out over 10 years, $400 a year, that's not too terrible. So think about that. These batteries, these ones specifically are warranted for 5 years. Totally expect them to last at least 10 years, probably 15. And even then, at the end of 15 years, they're not going to be dead. They're going to be reduced capacity. So maybe you'll get 60 to 70% out of what you used to get, 5 years earlier. So they're not going to be dead. They're just going to be reduced capacity. And who knows what's going to be around in 15 years, but you upgrade then. You'll probably still be using the inverter solar panels, but if you look at the $400 a year average, it makes it all start to seem pretty affordable. So, okay, that's the pricing on this. I talked about flexing either direction with that, go a little smaller, go a little bigger. I started using Growatt about 2 months ago. I hadn't really heard of them other than seeing the name in the forums a couple of times. And there was a local veteran he wanted to go live on a boat, and he asked me if I could cut him a deal on some batteries. So I gave them to him at cost after hearing his story. I wanted to help the guy out. He's going through chemo right now, and when he's done with that, he's going to jump on his boat. He's selling everything he owns, and he's going to do a loop around through the Mississippi, down the Gulf Coast, up the East Coast, and into Maine, and then the St. Lawrence River down through the Great Lakes. It's called a loop. It's called being a looper. It's 6,000 miles. Well, I said, well, let me look at this Growatt. I've been hearing more and more about it, and I've seen a couple videos, and he was like, yeah, let's do it. So we got him 200 amp hour batteries and a Growatt 24 volt version, put that in his boat, and I was really liking the components, the pieces that went into it. It seemed like pretty decent quality for the money that you're paying, and an all-in-one solution where it has the inverter, the solar charge controller, and the AC to DC charger built into it. All he needs to do now is add solar panels. He didn't have those yet. He's got a generator that he's running on the back, but he wants to get a couple of solar panels up on top. So he was going to save that for another day. And the shunt monitoring that's built into the batteries, he liked that. Plus, he can go back and do the Wi-Fi module. I learned about the Wi-Fi module. He didn't get that. He's going to be off grid most of the time, and I'll talk a little bit about why that matters with the Wi-Fi module. And the gist of that is it doesn't work if you're offline. All right, so I'll talk a little bit about what I like about their online stuff here, and then compare that kind of to the Victron behind me. So the Victron is the premium kind of top of the line. You don't care about money. You've got deep pockets, and you want to spend and have the best of the best. I'll kind of compare this, where it does good and where it does bad compared to what Victron does. So I like the web interface. It was a pretty simple setup. I did hit a couple snags, but I'm going to save all that for another video because it's outside of the scope of this one. But just know the setup is not terribly hard. This Wi-Fi dongle was about $50, and it's supposed to plug in directly to the bottom into that USB port, and then there's a couple screws that hold it in. But I can't get these any higher so that I can fit that in underneath. So I had to put it on an extension cord, and I also wanted to be able to show it to you guys. That's what the Wi-Fi module looks like. When you see a flashing blue light through that little keyhole right there where my thumb is, that's when you know it's connected to the server and everything's good in here. So once it starts sending data to the server, you can log in and you can see everything in watts, which is good and bad. I would prefer, or I would like to see an addition to this, because if they're showing me the watts, then I know that they could probably give me the voltage and the amps as well, but you can't see volts and amps in here. So that's kind of a hiccup that at least I haven't been able to figure it out. But yeah, so it tells you like you're coming in off the grid, and I'm going to plug in here real quick just so you can see it. It's going to beep, and then you're going to hear it. The charger is slowly going to ramp up inside of there. And once we see it update on here, I will go ahead and kill it. But this is as a 1 minute interval update. The default is 5. I was able to change it to 1, so it's updating every minute. And like I said, once you disconnect from the internet, you lose that ability to transfer the data over, and it does not store internally. The Venus GX and the Cbro for the Victron line of products does have that capability. You put a little memory stick in the Venus GX and it'll start logging that data once you go offline, and then once you get back to the internet or you get back online, it'll upload all that data and you can analyze it and you can look at it through here. So other than that, those are the key differences. They both kind of graph things out for you. So you hear it ramping up now. I don't know if that's making it through the microphone, but let's see if it's updated. It hasn't updated on here yet. So you got this graph. The blue is your, that's what you're bringing in off the grid. The red is what you're using. And then if we had solar hooked up, it would be a seafoam green color overlaid on top of this, so you can see how much energy you're gathering from the sun. So it's kind of cool to be able to see that in a graph. Victron has a very similar one. You got your state of charge. You've got your battery information here. This is your data logger, letting you know that battery discharging right now, and it's kind of giving you some more details. And then at the bottom, it's got like a little feel-good thing here telling you what your CO2 offset is, how much deforestation you're reducing, and how much coal you're saving. So that's kind of neat to be able to see that as well. Let's go ahead and hit the F5 button and refresh. Now it's updating. I'll go ahead and pull it. All right, so that should ramp down on the charging now. But I wanted to show you, so you can see importing 1,168 watts from the grid, and the arrow is pointing towards the inverter. And then the consumption right now, we're using a minimal, this is probably just self-consumption at 13 watts. And then down here, that charger ramped up and it was charging at 1,000 watts. So it was putting 1,000 watts per hour into the battery from the charger. So that's kind of neat. You can see all the arrows in there. And like I said, Victron has a very similar interface and things that you can use to see the same kind of information. You get your solar, how much discharging you've done, your load consumption, what you've imported from the grid as a total, and then your total charging. So kind of neat. Just wanted to show that so you can see at a middle tier kind of price point what you're getting for about an $850 inverter plus a $50 dongle, Wi-Fi dongle. So that's pretty cool, right? All right, moving on to the Victron. So this guy behind me is about $2,500, and all it does is the inverting. So it turns battery power into wall power or AC power. So on top of the inverter, this one back here is about a $2,500 inverter for 5,000 watts. So it is 2,000 watts more than this one, but it's $2,500 just to do the inverting. Then you got to buy a solar charge controller, and Victron around $200 for one of their decent solar charge controllers. AC to DC charger, you're talking about another $200 for Victron's equipment. And then their shunt monitoring solution is a BMV 712. It's one of the common ones people use. It's not the only one I think they have, but it's kind of the common one. Stay. Okay. The point to that is once you get into the Victron ecosystem of products, everything connects. It all works on CAN bus communication protocols. And I think they have their own. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but all of those pieces of equipment interconnect and work together. And then if you hook up a Venus GX, which is another couple hundred, 200 and something dollars, or the Cbro, I think is the replacement for that right now. I haven't messed with it in a while, but once you're in that ecosystem and everything's linked up, you start getting all of that information pushed into the portal, and you can get a ton of information. On top of that, they make a rock solid product. It's not flimsy at all. And if you compare the components inside of here to the components inside of here, and I'm talking like the screw terminals and connectors, Victron's going to win hands down on the component quality internally. I won't argue with that for a second. But are they both going to last for at least a year? Or I think Victron's warranted for 2 years. Are they both going to meet their warranty or last 2 years? I would say that this Growatt is probably capable of lasting 2 years, but that's not really the point of this. It's just to point out that Victron Quality product, but very expensive. You can go as much as you want. Their batteries are $1,100 a piece for a 100 amp hour, and they don't have Bluetooth built into them, but they do have wires, ports for the CAN bus connection, so you can get communication stuff from the battery, and they talk to each other. So, but just the batteries on that system, you're talking $4,500 about. And then all the hardware, you're talking maybe another $4,000 for all the equipment. And then you add $1,000 or $2,000 worth of solar panels on top of that. You're easily at the $10,000 mark if you go all in on a Victron solution. So this video, this whole series was meant to be a top-down, beginner's level, give you all the information so you can know what's out there and what's available, and then you can pick the path you want to go to. If you got deep pockets and you just like Victron all the way, go for it. If you need to save a buck and you're really tight on money, that's understandable. You go that route and get you used, find something on eBay, a used simple inverter, and you know what you need to hook up now to be self-sustaining off the grid. You can still do that for a very affordable price, and maybe like one lithium battery, or even if you have to get a lead acid, if that's what your finances afford, work with a lead acid until you get a little more money to build up your system. So hopefully that was helpful. If you liked this video and you thought it was helpful, please give it a thumbs up down below. It really helps the algorithms and people that are looking for this kind of information to find it. If you would, please subscribe down below. We got more videos coming. I wouldn't say I'm falling in love with it, but I'm very impressed with Growatt. I'm going to do more videos with them. That's why I got 2 of them. I wanted to check out the split phase. You can use that for running like what do you call those? Like a residential dryer. Some people put those in the back of the big campers and buses and toy haulers. People will put a residential dryer back there because they don't like the little 120 volt dryers that some campers have. They don't work very well, so they want the residential one. To do that, you've got to have split phase, and so you would need 2 of these to do that. So those videos are coming. If you subscribe below and click that bell icon, you'll get notified when we drop more videos down the road. We got some wire testing we're going to do. We're going to melt some wires and see what kind of loads different wires can take. Good stuff coming, so make sure you subscribe down below. If you have any comments, please post them down below. I'll do my best to answer them as always, and if I can't answer them, I will find a resource for you to go be able to investigate more about it. And yeah, other than that, that's it. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.